Mobile hunters, if you're interested in upping your mobile game, then head to tetherednation.com and check out their saddle gear. There are a few things you can actually buy that will help you become a better deer hunter or give you the freedom to hunt any tree or any situation. This is the reason why I started saddle hunting in the first place and why I use Tethered's gear. I can honestly say that Tethered's saddle gear has changed how I hunt for the better. Big tree, little tree, from the ground, it doesn't matter. I'm untethered by my gear to hunt the best setup for the situation, instead of hunting for a tree that my gear can use. My current core setup consists of the Phantom saddle, tethered one sticks, and the Predator platform, along with an assortment of their accessories. So if you want to up your mobile game, head over to tetherednation.com. If you're like me, you spend lots of time poring over maps, looking at weather data, all in an effort to help predict when and where my best times to hunt will be. It'd be nice if there was a reliable source with all this information in one place. Enter the Spartan Forge app. Unlike some other predictive apps on the market, Spartan Forge was created from military combat intelligence experience tailored for hunters, and stands at the nexus of machine learning and white-tailed deer hunting. No more man-made algorithms. This is a predictive model based on real GPS-collared deer data, historical and predictive weather, and the next level of mapping imagery, all at my fingertips. I've been using the iOS app this season, and it has replaced all my other mapping tools. Visit SpartanForge.ai and sign up today, or head to your iOS or Android app store. Use the promo code TRUTH to save some money and download it today. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 291. Today, I'm joined by Jordan Christiansen of The Draw to discuss how to make a hunt plan and secure tags for your adventure hunts. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you are doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. And happy 4th of July to you. Hopefully, this past weekend, you were able to do a little partying, a little bit of celebration of this great country that we live in. Hopefully, you kept all your appendages. There's always that one guy. I'm sure we all read about him in the news at this point. I'm recording this a little bit early because actually this week I'm on vacation, so trying to get this stuff done in advance of leaving for vacation over the 4th. So if someone did blow off digits and was in the news, I haven't seen it yet, but we all know it's going to happen, right? Like the one year it was, whatever the guy's name was, Pierre Paul Jones was a defensive end or something for the Giants, blew his like 2 digits off his right hand or something like that. Mangled his hand. So there's always someone that does that. So don't be that guy. I've also held, fireworks and shot them out of my hand whenever I was a young and stupid man. Not suggesting that I'm any brighter today, but maybe I at least know to not light off fireworks and use my hand as the holder of fireworks. So hopefully everyone got to have some beverages, spend some time with some family, do a little barbecuing, maybe got out in the woods and did a little white-tailing if you had the opportunity to. As you're listening to this, I'm probably laying along a lake somewhere or on a boat in the water, just enjoying the 4th of July holiday. So with that, we're going to go ahead and just kind of jump into the things today and just get hopped into the podcast. Before I do that, want to pass along some information. If you haven't heard yet, our buddies, that was a weird word. Our boys, that was kind of a buddies and boys. Our boys/buddies over at Exodus have launched a new product. And the idea here is that, we've all have been there where we were confused. We weren't sure if the areas we were shooting were the right ones for our bow, if they were spined correctly, if they were the best ones we could be using, whatever the case was, we just were uncertain about the setup that we were using. I know I've struggled with that at times. We've all been there. So that's why my buddies over at Exodus, they actually developed and sourced literally the most precise archery components on earth to build a tailored arrow for your hunting adventures. Here's what their team demanded before they brought the Exodus MMT to market. They demanded arrows fly with deadly accurate precision. High-grade components and technology creates the most accurate hunting arrow, period. Not only did they do you get arrows built with the same jig for exact consistency, all shafts and components are carefully sorted to build for tolerances at ±2 grains per dozen, which is crazy. They demanded arrows to maximize momentum efficiency. As bow hunters, the need for penetration is second only to a well-placed shot. Momentum is the driving factor for penetration. Maximize momentum, maximize penetration. They demanded an arrow that had deadly long-range accuracy. Say goodbye to the giant pin gaps or long or spread out sight tapes, which I am a culprit of that. So I will look forward to having a normal person's sight tape. They demanded an arrow that eliminated situational variables with proprietary fletching, arrow recovery, and components. Wind speeds up to 35 miles per hour become negligible at distance up to 100 yards. The Exodus MMT features a patent and proprietary 4K outer layer weave at a 1-to-1 ratio for increased torsion strength and durability while eliminating weave gaps. This offers balanced strength from all sides of the shaft and identical shaft diameters, meaning unmatched accuracy and performance. Built from the shaft's first dynamic bend, identifying the exact spine index on every arrow ensures superior consistency, accuracy, and efficiency downrange, allowing for precision tuning 4 times faster. If you've struggled to tune a bow, you can toss that out the window now with these arrows. The MMT carbon inner tube strengthens and stiffens the front end of the arrow, allowing unmatched arrow recovery, reducing energy loss by forcing the shaft into equilibrium at a faster rate and providing noticeable more downrange efficiency. The manufacturing process has some very specific stuff where they're using ceramic mandrels, which is how they're able to kind of get that consistent shape or 360 degree kind of shape of the arrow without any anomalies. This allows for slower, more consistent cooling, curing for better material integrity, and creates a uniform shaft diameter with no taper. Fletched with airfoil technology, this is some aerospace stuff here that meets wilderness. The fletchings on the Exodus MMT creates a quieter flight, faster spin rate, tighter flight profile, and less crosswind effect for more efficient downrange arrow. So be sure to head over to their website, check them out, exodusoutdoorgear.com, and check out all the details of the Exodus MMT and build your own arrows in their 3D builder. Arrows start at $119.50 a half dozen and $239 for a full dozen. So be sure to check those out. I've been flinging them, loving them. I'll have to adjust my sight tape a little bit, but I'm dropping bombs already with that. Even without, like, I probably need to adjust my center shot just a little bit, just because I'm going from a micro diameter shaft to these arrows. But even with that, like, I'm getting extremely consistent arrow placement, even without having done anything to my bow to kind of for these arrows specifically. So with that, go ahead and just go check those guys out, exodusoutdoorgear.com. You know you'll dig it. They build great stuff. Their cameras are bulletproof. No reason why their arrows wouldn't be as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's show. Have Jordan Christiansen on from The Draw. I got a bunch of questions when I mentioned that I had built a hunt plan with a group of folks to help me kind of through the application process of the different states that I wanted to hunt for the different species that I wanted to hunt, and start to map things out. And the idea for me, at least, was that I wanted to be able to start hunting a different Western state in perpetuity, for as long as my body will allow me to. And I needed to start making a plan to acquire points. And I wanted to be able to do it in units that weren't just like over-the-counter units. I wanted to have an opportunity to hunt, what I would kind of call a representative a specimen of the species for whatever unit that I was going to draw. And it's way more for me to kind of understand. It's obviously it's a lot harder to kind of dealing with the Western applications and tags and stuff like that than it is whitetails for the most part. So I ended up working with the folks at the Draw, and they were able to help me kind of identify what species I specifically wanted to go after, what states were going to be probably in my best interest based on my goals. And then ultimately, kind of outlining those things and kind of understanding how like the points are going to work and when I could expect to start to draw. And they basically put a plan together for me to where I'll start applying to those states, acquiring the right points for the types of units that I wanted to be in. And once it starts happening, usually it's about 3 years and you start to draw like your first tags. At that point, then, you should then really be able to draw and have some consistency and start to plan around a Western hunt, for me, at least on an annual basis. And that was the goal. So I wanted to bring Jordan on to kind of explain what they do, how they do it, because I got a bunch of questions about it. If you've been wanting to kind of hunt the West and you want to hunt the West consistency, but it's just so much to try to understand and deal with on your own, you don't have to. These guys can do everything from, from public land to which is what I'm doing. It's all public land setup, so they're just helping me with the tags and the applications, or they can help you choose the right unit, the right outfitter, the right guide, whatever the case is. They're kind of an all-inclusive shop, so it's really just about having the conversation with them, giving them your goals, what you're looking for, and they can kind of help steer you in the right direction. So I thought it would be a good idea to have Jordan on and just kind of explain what they do and how they do it. Because he can explain it much better than me, and I got a bunch of questions about it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's show. And as always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today, so everyone who listens to this podcast for any length of time probably heard me mention back in the spring that I was working with some folks to help me kind of make a kind of like a lifelong dream, if you will, to hunt a bunch of different cool places and be able to go out west year after year. And, I'm not getting any younger. And so I figured if I'm going to do it, I need to start doing it now. And there's a lot of, specifics that you kind of need to be aware of whenever you're trying to hunt out west, especially for a flatlander like myself. And so I've had a lot of people reach out, ask saying, hey, who are you working with? Who is helping you kind of make this plan? And how can I get in touch with them? So I decided I should have on none other than Mr. Jordan Christiansen from The Draw to help people understand what they do and how they're helping me make a plan. So what's going on, Jordan? How are you?
I'm outstanding. I sure appreciate being here, Clint. These are always a good time, and we're always pretty humbled to get a chance to shed a little light on who we are and what we do. So we appreciate it very much.
Yeah,
it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to come on. It's one of those things where, so the way I got introduced to you guys was my buddy Chad Sylvester, I think had set up a plan with you guys, and he and I hunt together every year, usually always whitetails. And we've always kind of talked about, going west, and he's going to Idaho this year. I'm going to Idaho this year separately, different units and so forth. But you can probably appreciate this for all the work you've done, not just with the draw, but as a guide and stuff like that. One of the most important things is having a good hunting partner, right? Especially if you're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so we've been fortunate enough to kind of find each other, and we've become best friends. And so we were like, we should try to start doing Western hunts together because we both don't mind when it sucks. You know what I mean? And we like hard hunts.
Sure.
And, we're not afraid of that. We go into it eyes wide open.
Unfortunately, they're not all good all the time, every time.
That's right. That's right. So we both have an appreciation for that, and we both do a good job of kind of keeping each other's morale up and stuff like that. And so we were both, wanted to start to set up Western hunts together. And with the different units and points that you need and stuff like that, it's just for someone who maybe doesn't do it all the time, it's confusing. At least it was for me. And so he had been working with you guys and said, hey, if we want to do these Western hunts together, you should maybe, hook up with these guys and talk about, putting a hunt plan together so we can basically build the same plan and be able to go hunt the same units together, however long we want to, do this together. And so I ended up talking to you guys and, and getting a hunt plan set up. And I've mentioned it a couple times on the podcast. I've had a lot of people reach out and ask me, who is this? How do I get involved and so forth? So just seemed like a perfect opportunity to have you on. But before we jump into all the details and stuff, if you wouldn't mind, just give a little bit of information, the folks that are listening about your background, what you do for a living and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of a back history of me. My dad, kind of in context to this conversation, my dad was super visionary. When I was real young in Utah, we lived in a state that was gradually pushing towards point systems. There was a lot of over-the-counter hunting when I grew up, and that has slowly kind of started going away. And I think just being right in the middle of that, he became pretty aware that if I was going to participate in some of the higher level, upper echelon type opportunities that were out there, that he needed to get me started. And so I'm going to jump a little bit here, but I'm 39 years old, Clint, and I've got over 20 points in a few places because of his kind of vision that this was the future. This was how hunting was going to happen out west. And some of them I've probably been playing the game for over 20 years, but have been able to cash in even a number of times on some really incredible experiences because of that ground floor that he gave me when I was younger. And some of them haven't quite played to fruition just yet, but that's probably the beginning, of a passion of mine around the applications for a long time. It's just what you did, I guess, growing up where I grew up, and yet I think my dad wishes he wouldn't have passed his hobby along quite as well, because that uh, I when I graduated high school, I joined the military. I was with the Army for about 6 years, a couple inactive after that. Did a year in combat over in Iraq from '05 to '06. Came home and ended up in southern New Mexico. And this is kind of where the hunting really took off for me. We have some sort of big game hunt 365 days a year here in New Mexico. And with Texas right next door, it just kind of lended itself that I kind of grabbed a hobby and turned it into a career for about 8 years. And I owned a taxidermy studio as well as guiding.
Hmm.
The guiding was ramping up constantly over those years, to where about the time I started consulting, for probably 4 or 5 years leading up to that, I was hunting at least 150, if not 200 days a year somewhere with someone. I guided for a lot of years on the Coyote in Arizona, Unit 1, different places in Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, anywhere I could just be hunting. That's what I wanted to be doing. And then about 2013, I ended up having my first son, and all of a sudden my goals and priorities changed. And God has a plan for everybody. I would have never dreamed mine was what I think He had in store for me. And next thing you know, I'm on the phone with Cabela's. They're asking me to move to Nebraska to work at their corporate headquarters, and it was probably the single most humbling thing that's ever happened to me professionally, is getting a job offer to come and join that tags program up there. And talk about like a baptism by fire, the volume that we were dealing with.
Right.
And I felt like I was pretty strong on a lot of states because I had just done it myself for a long time. But to get to have such a broad view, with so many individuals and so many different goals and agendas and all these things, I mean, it was like sharpening my axe like you could never dream of another scenario that would give you that many reps, if you will,
Right.
to kind of learn a new trade. So I did that for a number of years, moved up to Nebraska, and then Bass Pro bought Cabela's. A lot of things changed with that company, and the booking agency went a different direction. And my wife is from Las Cruces, New Mexico, so we moved back to southern New Mexico, and now we're just about to our 4th year anniversary. And there was 6 of us originally on that Cabela's team, and I've got 3 of us now under one roof again. And then we've also been able to add Casey Coolins and Jared Brown as full-time consultants. And my partner Jason Browning is really the the brain of it all, if you will. Like he's probably not as customer facing as the rest of us, but he's a brilliant individual and a huge part of why we're where we're at today. So
Nice.
kind of full circle. That's how I ended up doing this all day, every day. So that is my job. That's all we do. Is I do guide a little bit still, but it's 2 or 3 hunts a year.
Mhm.
The primary thing, I drive a desk, and I love it. I get to, instead of one guy every 5 days, I get 10 guys a day,
Right.
and share with them a lot of trial and error scenarios I've been through myself. And with such a broad view and so many people that we're helping, it also helps. You're always evolving. You're always
Yeah.
getting better because of all the experiences.
Yeah. I mean, so just so I'm clear, so the draw really kind of started with the the dissolving of the tags program at Cabela's, right? That's kind of like that was going the way of the dinosaur to a degree, and you guys were like, hey, this thing's doing a lot of really good work. We kind of understand how this system works. There's a lot of people who have a need still. We should figure out how we continue to make this work happen to continue to help to serve these people. Is that kind of like
It,
the
it's close to that. It would, the tags program didn't entirely dissolve, but they did. Cabela sold it to a private
mm,
individual, and just a kind of a different, just like any time buyouts and things
yeah,
happen. I think goals are different, agendas are different, and nothing bad, but definitely just a change. And it was like, I think I got an unbelievable education, and where they kind of had some vision. Me and the guys who came over at this point with us kind of had a different vision, and all good. I mean, I've said this for a long time. I think like a little bit to your point about your listeners and stuff. I think the idea of someone helping you manage hunting applications as a job, oddly enough, whether I was at Cabela's or there's some really other great companies out there, Hunting Fool, Epic, these have been around a long time, and yet in the Midwest and in the East, it's I guess for a Western guy like myself, it is slightly odd at how little awareness there is that businesses like ours exist. And so I've always said, whoever a guy finds, if it's a the relationship is the most important part of that process, because all of them, I know guys in each of these companies that are absolute fantastic consultants. They know their stuff inside and out. So a lot of times, if there's just a good connection with them and the consultant, I think overall building awareness about these types of business models in the Midwest and the East is whoever's getting the guide, there's benefit for all of us, because it is still so it's not lots of guys are unaware that it even exists. It's an
Yeah.
option that
Yeah.
have something to help them.
100%. Like, I had no clue. Like, I'll be 100%
Yeah,
honest. I was ignorant to it until Chad made mention of it to me. And, like, I'd been out west before, and, I've been to Montana, and I loved it there. And I know Montana has changed a little bit, because I know that where I was hunting previously, it went from, like, primarily, I think whenever the last time I went, you could basically get over the counter if you wanted to.
sure.
Um,
Yep.
and then recently, I know, my cousin and our buddy tried to go back out, I think the past 2 years, and I think they've only drawn like 1 year for that same unit, like the past 2 years.
Yeah,
So it
it's
became a lot harder to get like
an
places that,
ever-present problem.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And for a Midwesterner or an East Coaster who whitetail hunts, which, yeah, there's some, draw states like, the Iowas and the Kansases and stuff like that. But really, when it comes down to it, it's primarily Iowa, like, because Kansas, you
sure.
can, like, I drew this
Probably
year.
Iowa and Maine moose. Like those are the
Maine moose,
two
yeah.
that guys are aware of and know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
because
from that side of the country.
because Kansas, I drew this year with no points. Which,
Yep,
I know it's harder now because a lot more people are trying to go to Kansas, but you still can probably hunt that every other year if you really wanted to. And so
100% for sure you can.
yeah,
Yes,
and so
yeah, current anyway.
currently, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, currently, right.
Yeah,
So I think Midwesterners and East Coasters are kind of familiar with that, but like when you get out west, it
but as soon
becomes
as it gets complex at all,
yes,
where it's not an every other year thing, that's where I think there becomes so much mystery, if you will,
yes,
around the process, and it's almost like I attribute it a lot to like taxes. Like
yeah,
it's ever evolving, the changes. I mean, we're seeing headlines even this week with some big changes that happened earlier this year in Wyoming, and then a cause and effect of those changes now is getting ramped up with more changes coming down the pipeline.
hmm,
And I think that's exactly, so it's not even like you can just get a beat on it and say,
yeah,
okay, got it. It's always evolving, and it's almost like its own language. And oddly enough, it's funny because so many of these states, this is where it gets really hard, I think, for a lot of guys, is like I try to put things into about five categories when it comes to like applications. And it's either a bonus point system or a modified bonus point system. It's either a preference point system or a modified preference point system, or it's random. Like it's one of those five. And yet, state by state, when you're reading it, sometimes a state will call their process a preference point process, and yet the true definition, if you will, of that word, it is not what process they're using.
hmm,
Like it might be listed that, and again, there's where this confusion and mystery always happens. It's like, well, wait a minute. I thought I learned this, that a preference point means this, and yet because of the verbs and the words the states choose to use, it becomes muddy,
yeah,
very muddy. And
yeah. It's the shifting sands that you're talking about. Like, that's the one kind of area. And then even just for like a normal guy, because for me, I reached out to you guys because I'd been wanting to head back out west. And like I said, I'm headed to Idaho this year. It was a lottery draw. I ended up, drawing a tag for like the Panhandle. So it wasn't like a super sought after unit, which is probably why I got it. But I have a buddy who lives there that I was wanting to go hunt with. And
perfect.
Yeah, so I was like, perfect. I can go. Like, not a big deal. I'm not looking to kill the biggest bull. I'm just looking to go have some fun and hear some bugles and chase some, run some drainages. And and so, but what I did wanted to do is I wanted to have like I'm not a guy who chases like trophies necessarily, and I think a lot of guys coming from the Midwest and East probably aren't either. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I wanted to kind of have experiences.
It's an ever-growing demographic within guys participating in the applications, right?
Yeah,
It used to be very rigid that you played the game so that you could go to the best areas to shoot the biggest things. And nowadays, the surge in applications we see, I think, are coming from guys that are just like, listen, I just want to go.
yeah. I just
Like
want to see.
I don't
Yeah,
yeah, I want to see animals. I want to have a chance to be successful. And as long as I'm not hunting yearlings,
yeah,
like as long as the area I'm going to has some level of track record for at least, 3 to 5 year old animals,
mm,
um, yeah, happy.
yeah.
Guys are super happy with that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I was at. Is I had a list of places that I really wanted to go see and hunt. Like, and it was less about, what caliber of animal am I going to see. I just wanted something representative of a okay unit. You know what I mean? Like, that's really all
Yep.
I was looking for. But it was more like the one place I really wanted to get to was the Missouri Breaks. Like, I want to
Sure.
go there and I want to hunt there. And so that was one of the items where it's like that's where I want to go. And I just want to see animals. I want to just be able to hunt that place and see that place one time. You know, and I
Yeah.
had a
Absolutely.
list of those and some species. And the hard part is like I've had this in my head for years, but
Yep.
how daunting it is to try to make a plan to try to get there on your own and know what unit to go to. I mean, there's just so much research that the individual person has to do. And then the other part of it too is I wanted to have a setup where I could have a revolving door after a couple years that I could accumulate enough points that I could go to a different Western state, like basically every year in perpetuity until I decide that I don't really want to do it anymore. My body won't allow it, whatever the case is, you know? And that
Sure.
was, and that was really like the calling for me to start working with you guys was, truly set up a hunt plan, not just like hey, I want to go here in 40 years. That's like help me get there. It was, I've got 4 or 5 states that I want to hunt and 3 species that I want to hunt. I want to make a plan to where I can have an opportunity to hunt one of those states and one of those species basically every year, within like the next 3 to 4 years once I accumulate enough points for like the units that we've outlined. And that was
Sure.
the really the kind of calling card for me. So I'm
Well, I
talking a lot
think
about what I want to do, but I want you to get a chance to kind of explain to people how you help people make that actually happen.
yeah, no, but I love your preface to it, right? Because I think it's a very similar type of goal and agenda that a lot of guys call when they do finally make this call and get on with the consultant and like kind of more of a 10,000 foot view and something I dive a little deeper into, like if I was giving one of my seminars or something like that, is that an idea that hunting is a very progressive sport
Mm-hmm.
by nature. Like I think that from the time we get started, whether it was when we were young kids with pellet guns or whether you're an adult that's getting started or whatever it is, inevitably, as you find success, the goal shifts and moves and it's ever evolving. And sometimes guys go down these paths where like a guy from the Midwest and the East Coast, whitetail specifically, right? Eventually, it's not about just killing a whitetail, which is what it probably was when you got started. It's like killing a big whitetail, right?
Right,
And
right.
and that's one form of progression. But seeing new things and experiencing new styles and all of those types of things, I think fall right in line with that progression, all the way to where eventually some guys get bit by the bug bad and you're hunting all corners of the earth and
Right.
everything. But the application, definitely, especially if you start to understand all the states and then how they can have some synergy together, then you can create what we call a hunt plan that regardless almost of your goals, you can leverage these applications to create the opportunity instead of having to default to some expensive landowner permit or voucher, and or the flip side of that, defaulting always to an over-the-counter area that probably doesn't have a very good success rate and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like so, the applications allow you to start mapping out your progression and kind of acknowledging that it is real, it's going to happen. And so instead of waking up in 10 years and being like, man, I got enough elk antlers in my garage, I can't run and jump over them any longer. Now, like that 300-inch bull or that 5x5 just isn't doing it for me anymore. And it's like, well, what am I going to do? If that happens and you haven't been planning for it and preparing for it, unfortunately, with the current systems that exist within these point systems, you're really behind the curve at that point. But if we've been hunting as often as we want to leading up to that kind of breaking point, if you will, and inevitably the applications will have been creating their own momentum so that you constantly are progressing. There is something a little more exciting coming down the pipeline, a little bit more higher and higher levels all the time without, the on the other side of it, we get guys every once in a while, they'll call us and it's like, I've been putting in for Arizona elk for 18 years and I really would like to go. Can you help us? And it's like, well, what else have you got going on? And they're like, nothing. And it's like, holy cow, 18 years to wait on
Right.
this elk. Uh, and then the hunting part of it comes into play. Like the idea that we're going to wait 18, 20 years for some experience and then put it in a 10-day window and just say, okay, all my dreams are going to come true because I waited this long for this is a super unrealistic idea. That's just not how hunting is, even in unbelievable areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever your kind of core species that you grew up with, you think back about how many days you've hunted those and how many times it didn't work out. And it's like, oh, it would be like me coming to Iowa sight unseen or Ohio or wherever and saying, okay, I got a 5-day window. I need to kill a 200-inch deer. Like
Right.
everyone would be like, well, what do you mean? And it's like, well, I just really want to. I've been waiting a long time for this. And it's like, that's not how it works. It's no different out west. And yet, because they're tracking how many years they've told us no, it sometimes it makes us feel almost, entitled
Yeah.
to something magical happening. And yet, it's still just a hunt, and we get our chance
Yeah.
to go. So
Yeah.
if you're not hunting regularly through that process, that can be a really hard pill to swallow. But if you've got lots of things moving and shifting for you so that you are hunting as often as you are, you're probably more ready to capitalize on that, unicorn tag, if you will.
Yeah.
And second of all, there's not as much at stake
Yeah.
when that does happen.
Yeah, it's practice makes perfect, right? If you're going to go on a once in a lifetime elk hunt, like, my mind would be how many elk hunts can I get in between now and then and other places that are not once in a lifetime that I can go more often so I actually know how to hunt elk whenever I'm there.
Yeah,
Like
right.
that
And
would be my thinking. You know what I
you're
mean?
coming off of a high school all-star game and they put you in the World Series, like it's probably not going to go very well, right? Right.
Right, that's
But if
right.
it comes with the minors and college and farm leagues and all of that, and you find yourself on the major league mound, like you're probably ready. Like
Right.
you've done diligence, you've worked hard to get there, and now you're going to capitalize on
Yeah, yeah. There's like my dream hunt, and I don't even know how you would prepare for
it.
this. Is and I don't know if I'll ever get to do it because it's an obscenely expensive hunt. But is I would love to hunt Kodiak brown bear with a bow.
Sure.
That's I would love to do that, and I don't know if there's any way that you could actually. Well, I'll ask you: is there any way that you could feasibly kind of prepare for a hunt like that,
Um,
other than hunting like spring bear and stuff like that, just black bear or whatever? But
I don't know, especially of all particular species in North America and destinations, right? Like that you're heading into a very remote patch of dirt for an apex predator that few Americans, especially lower 48, have any experience with dealing, with
Mhm.
being in areas with such a daunting species to target. But what I would say to it is that like preparing uh, for that almost I don't know what the best way to say this is. Yeah, there is because if you've traveled and you've done and you've grinded and you've had good hunts and you've had bad hunts and it's like golf, right? Like
Mhm.
it's a I think especially something like a brown bear Like I remember the first brown bear hunt I ever sold for Cabela's, and I'm like so excited. I'm so happy with myself. I think at the time it was the single most expensive hunt I'd ever sold to
Mhm.
somebody. And I come out of my office and I'm like, yeah. And my boss is like, oh, congratulations. You just sold somebody 10 of the shittiest days of hunting they'll ever experience for what they could have bought a truck for. Right. And
Right.
I mean, like, talk about like just like deflate the sale, like right,
Right.
the balloon immediately. And I'm like, what do you mean? And yet it's I think of all species, that one in particular, not consulting heavily to a guy that like, listen, you got a 10-day window and you could be staring at your guide in a tent for 4 of those days in nothing but rain. And when there's that much time and effort and money put into a goal like that, setting in a tent, just hearing the rain just beating down to a point where it's deafening, it is a very hard mental thing for a guy who, if you've never even tasted some sort of frustration on a hunt that you've invested in previously, could be a very debilitating, scenario that plays out. So it's more, maybe not the actual moment of truth, if you will,
Hmm.
but the mental game that goes into some of those types of hunts, whether it's stone sheep or brown bear or some of these that just unfortunately have not unbelievable track or success rates when guys go, and yet you've got to do everything in your power. And then part of that is just preparing mentally by doing other things and being in those scenarios where it's not perfect so that you can fix it and keep moving forward with renewed energy. I like when I was guiding, a lot of our hunts in New Mexico are 5 days, and on purpose at breakfast, if we were on morning 4, I saved it all the way till then. I would walk into wherever the wall tent or a lodge or wherever I was guiding out of, and I tell those guys they're going to write songs about us today. Today is the day. Like we're going to be heroes, because if you're not walking into day 4 with that same intensity as you walked into day 1,
Hmm.
like it can get the best of you,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so finding ways, whether it's personally or your guide is kind of helping you along with that, find that passion and that drive. Because if you're on day 4 and on a 5-day hunt, you're feeling that pressure, and you need to be focused on winning, not on the time on the clock, right?
Right.
And so that, I guess, gonna say, what can you do to prepare for something like that? Hunt.
Yeah.
Go hunt.
Yeah.
Be out there. Do things um so that you've been there before
Yeah.
when it's not going perfectly.
Yeah. That's great advice. I think the one thing that people, or at least the questions that I got, whenever people heard that I was, had made a hunt plan and was to prepare to go out west for a handful of years in succession and so forth. I think the misconception was they immediately ask, was it through outfitters or whatever. And I said, and I don't, and this is where I'd like to kind of explain like the different options of hunt plans, because for me, my approach is I like to hunt public land because I like the adventure aspect of it, and I'm still able-bodied, and I want to do that for as long as my body will let me. And then there will come a time in my life where I will change how I hunt because my body will require it, and then that might be where I use an outfitter or a guide or whatever just to kind of continue
Sure.
to keep me out there doing stuff. And so I think some of the misconception is that they think it can only be done one way, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the hunt plan is really kind of tailored for you. That was the one thing I was working with Jared. He was just
Yep.
he was super tuned in, wanted to know what type of experiences I wanted to have, what species I wanted to have. Did I have states in mind, or did I need help in like kind of defining the states based on the type of experience I wanted to have? And he did a great job. And I ended up with like, I think it was Montana, Colorado, I want to say Utah, Wyoming, I think it was those four, and then there was a sneaky sneak in one that we did for a whitetail one that I'm not going to mention because I don't want anyone else to know about it. But
Right.
there was a sneaky one that we got for a like a really hard to get kind of whitetail scenario. And my species were mule deer, antelope, and elk were my three species. And with
Sure.
that, he put together a plan for me to be able to kind of, and it was all public land, looking at units that have good public land options, and that was the criteria for my hunt plan. So can you talk a little bit about how you set up different hunt plans for different people and what the different options are?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, um, a lot of it really does come down to just the one thing, as you get to know me, Clint, like I'm like the most long-winded human on earth, right? And yet, and I've been told since I've ever got into sales that like, my efficiency is really low, because I'm so long-winded.
Right.
And yet, I really feel like I've like kind of just owned up to that in the last couple of years, and guys like Casey and Jared both are really kind of seeing my vision on this. Like, first of all, if you're not asking a lot of, most of these wouldn't even know how to articulate what their dream and what their vision and what their goals are necessarily. Maybe one specific hunt, right? They got
Hmm.
some vision in mind they're losing sleep over, but it takes a lot of time to ask enough questions so that you can get to a point where the guy truly, whether he meant to or not, has been able to articulate like all of these different things that kind of make him feel good and make him want, like, and it's species driven, and it's weapon driven, it's experience driven, it's all these things. So we go through lots and lots of questions that do take some time on that initial consultation, and yet at the end of the day, um, if we've done well and done our jobs, then almost like, this almost sounds bad, but regardless of what a guy says,
Hmm.
we're now able to say, okay, based on all this information that we have, you should be spending your money and investing in this state and this state and this state and this state to accomplish the number of hunts in the next 10 years that you're wanting to go on and beyond. And then usually we just want to incorporate, because it is even two brothers or two buddies or a father and a son, especially a father and a son. Once you start getting kids involved in it, some of the opportunities exist for them. um, they should be doing absolutely. And yet, on the flip side of that, especially depending on the dad's age, we may be adamantly talking you out of that, right? Like,
Right.
please don't invest. If you're 45 years old, don't invest over here. But for a 10-year old that's just getting started, like, absolutely we have to get him started because he's got the time to do all of that. And so a lot of it is just time on the phone. And unfortunately, we don't get to shake hands with very many guys, but what we do have is time, and we want to give that. And so I guess that's the process, right? Like,
Hmm.
take time, spend as much as you need on each guy you're with. These questions have been answered, and then you can really have a lot of confidence moving forward. And hopefully, the more we're educating the guy, our guys, about why we're choosing those states, and some of that mystery gets taken out of it, so that they've got a little more context, so that it doesn't feel like we're just mindlessly donating money to these states every year. And it's like, well, I still don't know. And that might even take 3, 4 conversations. It might take 2 or 3 years to truly get there. But if we do ask the right questions, spend enough time, and then the other cool part of that, and like I tell these guys all the time, like, the more time you're spending, the more genuine the relationship really is. And we don't want to be a call center. Like,
Right.
I want to be, we want to have those very genuine relationships, because when they exist, cool things happen. It's your buddy who drew. It's
Right.
your buddy's application. It matters. It's not just some random guy on the phone. And so that's one piece of it that I think we do very contrasting to really anybody else that I know out there, is that our agenda about like getting to the next guy is not there. Like,
Right.
we, not how we're wired. And that's how we come to those conclusions. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of academics that we do on our end to kind of help us get to those conclusions based on a guy's answer. But really, to set it up right and set it up for them, it's just time. take the time and ask lots of questions and uh, and then execute accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was pretty seamless for me. I had, two different conversations with Jared, and we pretty quickly got things, ironed out. I did kind of come into the chat with, like, I kind of knew what species I wanted to hunt, kind of knew what states I wanted to hunt, and I think our conversation was more just about, what type of unit do I want to try to draw? You know what I mean? Like, what is my goal, species level goal, so to speak, right? Like, as far as, like, are you
Yep.
hunting all public? Like, how do you want to do that? Like, do you want
Yeah,
what type?
style.
Yeah, what
But
style
like
hunt do I want to
elk,
hunt?
for example, right? Like I always use elk. Like elk is absolutely the broadest topic
Hmm.
in the United States right now, because if you want to do a 9-day horseback trip in the prettiest places you've ever seen in your life, but probably never see an elk and catch 1,000 fish while you're there for pennies, like, yeah, we got it. You want to do a $40,000 lodge based hunt for the biggest bulls you could dream of? Yeah, we got that too.
Right.
Like it's there's so when a guy's like, I really want to go elk hunting, that to me sparks at least a half a dozen questions, because that what he's losing sleep over and what his vision and goal and dream really is could be so contrasting from the guy I was just got off the phone with. The horseback, the wall tents, the lodge base, the public land, the private land, the guided, the non-guided, the weapon selection, are we waterhole, tree stand, are we running and gunning? Like, there's all these scenarios. So as soon as we kind of even just have just elk in general,
Mhm.
let alone some of the other species like that, the longer we can kind of dig through that, the better understanding we have. And then to your point, or kind of in context to something you said a little bit ago, of like, when some of your guys asked, is it outfitters that you're working with? Like, I think we couldn't be further from that,
Right.
honestly, because if I'm an outfitter, God bless him, right? We work with lots of them, tons of, I mean, all over the country. They're a big part of our business model, if you will, is having these relationships. But if I'm them and a random guy calls me on the phone and he's like, so are you a lodge based hunt, and maybe you normally hunt out of camping trailers, but you're like, well, we could, I've got a buddy with a cabin, we could probably do something like that. And he's like, oh, are you on horseback? And you're like, well, we usually just hunt out of the truck, but if you want to do horses, I got some horses we could get in the mix of it. And as just like any business in the country, like, his goal is to try and say yes and be as accommodating as he can to a
Right.
potential customer,
Right.
right? And yet what the hunter doesn't understand with that is that although this guy's really nice, he's really accommodating, and he seems very genuine in his desire to help, by unbeknownst to them, they're pulling that outfitter further and further away from what his core run, like, day in and
Capabilities
day
are.
out
Yeah.
experience, yeah, is. And you're putting him in a scenario where he's not who he's even advertising. The success you're seeing is not a based on being the style being dictated by the hunter who's asking for it. It's like, this is what I'm really good at. So as consultants, when somebody articulates what their vision and what their dream is, then our job is, if we're worth two shits as consultants, is to know somebody. Be
Right.
like, man, what you just explained is exactly what this guy does every day, and he's dang good at it.
Right.
And so because of that, I think that we should get started in this state and this application, and this is how many years, or maybe it's the next year, whatever it is, but this is the time frame on what we should expect to be able to go on this experience. So we're going to start back planning and doing just like any other goal. We're going to set the goal and then start back planning till we take that first step towards accomplishing that goal, and then and so on and so forth. We work our way through all of that, all of those different scenarios, and that's how we come to a conclusion on what should be on a guy's hunt plan, and what shouldn't be on a hunt plan. And then And then to be totally honest, if oftentimes one of our main goals is I feel real strongly that we really try our best. It's every once in a while we'll have a guy with some very unique goals that maybe doesn't fit quite into this, but it's pretty common that we should be able to at least get a guy on a hunt within the first 3 years, right?
Yeah.
And I find that extremely important to do that because just like myself, I need to see some sort of benefit from this investment that I'm making. And so if we can accomplish that in the first 3 years and go get on a hunt and have a positive experience, it's very common for us that a guy will come back and say, I need to know more. Like I want to see more. And then it might go further down the rabbit hole. And then if you're like me, and you're hopelessly addicted and you're immature and reckless, like you just apply for everything because you love I love the game.
Right.
It's the funnest thing. Drawing a tag is like one of the most.
Oh, it's like
uh,
Christmas. You kidding
oh
me?
my god, like it I geek out about it so bad. And and then especially when you see somebody hit a lightning strike, right? I
Yeah.
call them unicorn tags. Like if I have a couple of folks this year that drew some deer and elk tags that had, one guy had 9 points and his odds of drawing it's the best deer hunt in Nevada. And his odds were still percent with 9 years into that thing. I have another guy that was 3 years in on a hunt that's currently taking like 22 years to draw, and he snagged it. His odds were less than 1%, and those are the freaking like
Yeah.
that's the gas on the fire.
Yeah.
You see those guys win, and my wife ever finds out how hard I play the game, she's gonna lose her mind because like I see these like less than 1%ers come across my desk every year, and I'm like, maybe next year, like it could be me, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
yeah, like what if it's me next time? And that's part of the progression, right?
Yeah.
Is just, um, there's so many states and places. I think that's the one piece of the puzzle that I would argue that if a guy has more than 5 points, like you're doing it wrong. Like,
Yeah.
what are you waiting for? Why are we continuing to donate money to this state? And on the flip side of it, there are states that it's not in my opinion, it wouldn't be necessarily a hunt plan that you're executing. It's that you truly have kind of learned enough to understand that at this point we're going to invest over here, not for any other reason than there is some really special opportunities if we apply there. We're probably mathematically, we're probably never going to draw, but you can't win if you don't play.
Right.
And that's fine but our goal is to make sure that we're articulating that extremely well with guys so that if $1 has been spent, it's within context. It's with understanding of what it is that we're doing. And
Yeah.
some are a very rigid hunt plan that we're executing, and others are because we like the game and we want
Right.
to play it more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's I had a really deep appreciation for, the information you guys were able to share with me, and just in the nuances of like it's just there's things that you guys know and understand to help make a hunt plan that the most avid neurotic person who would be tracking points and things like that still wouldn't know. It was like
They
it
can't
was
get it. They can't see it on a big enough scale to see the cause and effect that application is having on it's on each other
yeah.
from state to state. Without seeing thousands of them and seeing the trends and seeing how it all plays in, you miss little pieces of the puzzle that can help you really play the game better.
Mhm.
And better meaning not only having more success drawing, but I've had this phone call where guys doing it themselves. Maybe they're even, they're very organized. They've got their own spreadsheets. They got their own plan. They're executing that plan well. And the next thing they know is they've got 2 or 3 tags in 1 year.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Like I haven't drawn anything for a long time, and now I drew 3. Well, that's another piece of it is if you understand the game very well and how these applications play with each other, you can avoid some of those pitfalls where now some guys will choose to hunt all three of them, and yet are you really giving it its due diligence? Or are you capable of giving it its due diligence because you've got all these other things going on, and on as well as um, if they turn them back, or God forbid they just simply don't go and hunt it. It's like,
Right.
oh my God, that's all for
For
nothing.
nothing.
And
Yeah.
that, yeah, and that's definitely a part of it, that when you are working with lots of guys for, a long time, and you understand how those applications work within each other, you can keep that aggressiveness very, very high, and yet not risking having too much going, or overlapping season dates, or all these other scenarios that we hear of and see, when guys end up calling us and like, I need help. Like,
Right.
what do I got to do here?
Yeah. Yeah, and just the nuance also of just the unit level information. I know whenever I was talking through my plan, you guys have like feelers out, you know what I mean? So you'll know like a unit that maybe is under the radar and on the come up,
Totally.
and that
Yep.
there's not a lot of pressure there because man, they've been dragging a lot of big bulls out of there, but people just haven't been
If you
talking
know
about it,
where a very specific animal is, and you know right where he is, do not tell us.
Right.
Because right,
Yeah.
no, we do try to respect that as much as we can, but you're right. Like, we see the stuff that's trending up, and we have lots of guys boots on the ground, whether it's outfitters, or even just uh, other hunters that go in and have a positive experience with something, and we want to help as many guys as we can.
Yeah.
So it's
That was ultimately how I ended up with one of the whitetail hunt that I mentioned that I won't mention the name of. It was a boots on the ground situation that I think you guys had learned. I think you guys had knew of, but someone had an experience and you were aware of the experience. And when I was talking to Jared, he knew I was a big whitetail guy. And so he just was like, hey, he's like, I know this is really for Western like game hunting. He's like, but there's a really, really unique public land whitetail hunt that is very specific. He was like, if you're interested, he was like, and it's a humdinger. And I was like,
and it's I think I know it without even looking at your hump time. I'm guessing I know which one it is.
probably.
And that whole program is unbelievable,
Yeah.
especially for a DIY guy. Like,
Yeah.
it is that one took us a couple of years to really dig our feet in, where and wrap our mind around it. Lots and lots of phone calls, lots of travel, and I'm so excited for that entire program. Like,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, we're gonna do some pretty special stuff with guys that just doesn't seem to be really hitting the radar right now.
Yeah.
It's we're
Are you there?
so
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry. I lost you for a second. Cool, man. Well, hey, let's jump into some hunting here real quick before we start moving in toward to wrapping this thing up. So you've literally hunted and guided all over the place, from Alaska, South Africa, you name it, you've probably been there. What has your favorite hunt been to date?
Oh man, I'm gonna be like super like boring to an extent with that, probably. So last year, he was 8 years old. My 8 year old killed his first deer and his first bear.
Oh, wow.
So like, I can't even describe how that felt as a dad. Like, and he's teed up like this spoiled kid. Like, he doesn't even know how good he's got it, because dad knows how to play the game pretty well,
Right.
and he's got a whole bunch of stuff lined up this year as well. Personally, I, so when I was like 14 years old, I was pushing shopping carts at a Kmart, and I've got two older brothers, 8 years older, one's 9 years older. And I've always said those my two brothers are like my crystal ball. Like, I always get to see what's coming down the life because of them. And so there I am. I'm 14 years old. They're graduated. They're some of them. One of them's even starting a family and all of this type of stuff. And I knew I loved hunting. I don't know that I quite understood it as much as I do now, but I knew that I wanted to go do something really special, prior to graduating, because if I didn't, life was going to happen very quick. I knew I was going to join the military, and life was going to start moving. So I started saving all my money and all to save up for a doll sheep.
Mm.
And by the time I was a senior in high school, I wasn't able to. I couldn't quite afford that doll sheep hunt still, and yet I was able to afford a caribou hunt. And I went up to my first week that I was a senior in high school. I went up caribou hunting in the Northwest Territories, and uh, it was like a horrible hunt. We saw like 20 caribou, worked my butt off. But on day three, I killed this amazing bull caribou. I was one of only a couple of guys that week that actually even killed one. And I'm telling you, like a fire, like absolutely burned on that hunt. And to this day, I definitely look back because I don't know if I've been to Africa, I've been to Alaska, I've been to some of these other places, and yet I don't remember maybe it taking as much effort as that one took
Hmm.
to even just be standing there doing it. And so it's always been really special for me that I got to go do that when I was 18 years old. And it takes a freaking ton of shopping carts to go on a caribou hunt. Like, gotta push a lot of them to be able to do that. And 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 yet it really set the tone. Like almost immediately, I knew as soon as I got out of the military, I was going to just jump in with both feet. So that one's always stood out to me a lot. And then I would say I don't know, that one's probably the
Yeah.
standout. That caribou hunt really set in motion really a lot of the rest of my life,
Right.
for sure.
What do you think, or at least what you've hunted, what's been the hardest species for you to kill, in your opinion?
Uh, um, I'm reminded of a quote one time. So Chuck Adams, when he got done with his North American 29, they were interviewing him and they were asking, what was similar questions. What was the hardest? What was the scariest? What was, your favorite and all of that type of stuff. And when they got to what is the hardest, now mind you, he had the world record at this time. His answer to what was the hardest is that I think a doe coos deer should qualify for Pope and Young. That's what his answer was.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I've always remembered that. And now, mind you, I've guided myself. If you wanted to like take a Boone and Crockett scale, the best of any species I've ever killed, it happens to be a coos deer. And I think I would have to go with them as the hardest. I'm an unbelievable advocate of aoudad hunting. Like I'm such a geek about those sheep. I if they told me I could only hunt one animal the rest of my life, I think it would be aoudad.
Hmm.
And a lot of that is because they still mess me up every time I hunt them. Coos same way. Like if I see a mule deer or see an elk or an antelope or a bighorn sheep, like I'm going to kill it. All I got to do is see it and find it, and then I'm going to. And yet I get my butt kicked so much from those coos deer and those aoudad. And guided uh, I've guided governor's tags. I feel like I've kind of gone the highest level in a lot of that stuff, and yet uh, they still give me fits. And then the other thing I would probably add to that is honestly whitetails.
Hmm.
Like I'd been to Africa and Alaska and the Northwest Territories. I'd been all over the place before I ever hunted whitetails. And the first whitetail I ever killed, I was by myself up on this little property up in the panhandle of Texas. And I'm sitting in a tripod stand and the wind's blowing. It's like freezing my butt off. I can't. The tripod stand is shaking because of the wind, and this buck comes out at probably 500 yards in this winter wheat field. And in the West, like I think it's so different because you're just kind of like going, and then it's like, hey, there's your shot, and you take it. Well, here I am in this tripod stand, and I can't do anything about it at 500 yards. My crosshairs are all over the freaking place, and I'm forced to watch this deer come all the way up to like 80 yards before I feel comfortable shooting him. And I really think I kept my cool and kept it together pretty well all the way up until the shot. And when I shot, I don't think I've ever had something mess me up so bad in my life. Like I remember it would have been like 5 a.m. in Utah where I called my brothers and they're like, "What is going on?" I'm like, "I just killed a giant whitetail." And I tried to climb out of that tripod stand like probably 1 minute after it happened and was shaking so bad I had to sit back down and like gather myself because I was going to fall out of that thing. And since then I I've I've tried to chase that feeling again that whitetail give me because as bizarre as that probably sounds, like I never to this day when I see a whitetail, like I God, look at that thing.
Yeah.
Look at him right there. Because growing up in Utah and in New Mexico, Arizona, like we never saw him. Like I
Right.
still totally like when I see a doe whitetail, I'm like, wow, look at that. There's a
Yeah.
whitetail.
Yeah.
And so
I'm the same way, man.
hey,
I still get fired up when I see does. I always say that. I'm like, the day that comes that I don't get fired up just seeing deer in general when I'm in a tree, will be the day that I should probably hang it up. Because
yeah.
but well, man, I know we've been doing this for about an hour. I want to be sensitive to your time. Make sure you have some time to get back to your family and stuff. But before I let you go, if you wouldn't mind, let folks know where they can find out more about the draw, the website, where they can kind of follow you guys and just find more information in general.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Probably the first one is like a lot of folks, our Instagram page is at We Are the Draw. So if you're inclined to be on social media, check us out there or Facebook at the Draw. We have a YouTube channel, and then the www.thedraw.com. There's lots of information on there, and our absolute favorite is just give us a call 575-222-1234. And we'd love a chance to talk and at least just see if there's something there that we can help with, because that's the goal is just see if we can ask enough questions that we can find a way to really help somebody chase a dream down that maybe they thought was out of reach.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I urge everyone to check out the website and just give these dudes a call. If going west and hunting west is something that you've wanted to do and you maybe thought it was out of reach or you couldn't hunt the types of places that you wanted to hunt or whatever the case is, I urge you just to give them a quick phone call, have a quick conversation, and start to think about a hunt plan because you only get one chance to travel in this ball of dirt. You might as well make the best of it. So, Jordan, I
Yeah.
appreciate your time, brother. I will let you get going. You have yourself a good rest of your weekend, and good luck this upcoming season.
Awesome. I sure appreciate the opportunity, Clint. And like always, give us a call if you need anything at all. Okay.
Will do. All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Spartan Forge, Exodus, and Skull Brew Coffee Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.